The late afternoon sun slipped gently through the curtains, bathing the living room in a warm golden hue. The laughter that once filled the space had been replaced by a quiet tension, the kind that presses against the chest and makes breathing feel heavier than it should. In a corner of the room sat little Emma, barely 7, hugging her worn-out stuffed rabbit close to her chest. Her eyes, once bright with the boundless wonder of childhood, now seemed older than they should have been. She didn't speak much these days, and when she did, her voice trembled as if she were afraid of the sound of it. Her mother, Rachel, moved mechanically around the kitchen, stirring soup she wasn't really planning to eat. She had hired a new babysitter 2 weeks ago, a young woman named Denise, polite on the surface, sweet-talking her way through the interview, and seemingly perfect for the job. Rachel worked long shifts at the local clinic, often returning home after dark, trusting that her little girl was safe. But lately, something felt wrong. Emma had become quieter. She flinched when someone raised their voice, even slightly. And when Rachel had gently asked her about it, the child just shook her head and said she was fine. Rachel's husband, Mark, had been away for months on a construction project out of state. He called every night, his deep, steady voice filling their small home through the phone speaker. Emma used to giggle at his jokes and beg him to tell bedtime stories, but recently she avoided the phone calls altogether. "I'm sleepy," she would whisper and run upstairs before he could say goodnight. Mark had noticed the change, and though Rachel tried to downplay it, a growing worry had begun to gnaw at him. One Friday evening, Rachel was stuck in traffic, exhausted and anxious to get home. She called Denise to check in. "Everything okay with Emma?" she asked. Denise's tone was curt. "She's fine. We're just watching a movie." But in the background, Rachel thought she heard Emma whimper, a sound so faint that it could have been static, but a mother's heart always knows. Her stomach turned cold. She sped home faster than she should have, telling herself she was overreacting. When she arrived, the house was quiet, too quiet. Denise opened the door with a forced smile, her eyes darting nervously. "Emma's asleep," she said quickly. "We had dinner early." Rachel nodded, pretending to accept it. She thanked Denise, who grabbed her bag and left in a hurry. But as soon as the door closed, Rachel went upstairs and found Emma lying curled up on the bed, not asleep, but staring blankly at the wall. When she saw her mother, she sat up quickly and threw her arms around her, trembling. Rachel held her close, whispering, "It's okay, baby. You're safe." She didn't ask anything that night, she just stayed there, stroking her hair until Emma finally drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Rachel woke to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table, coloring quietly. There was a small bruise on her wrist. Rachel's breath caught. "Sweetheart, what happened?" she asked gently. Emma looked down at the paper and whispered, "Denise said I was bad. I spilled the milk." Her tiny voice broke in the middle of the sentence. The words hit Rachel like a blade. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She didn't want to frighten her daughter more. She just hugged her tightly and promised in a trembling voice, "No one will ever hurt you again. I promise." That evening, she called Mark. Her voice cracked as she told him everything. There was silence on the line for several seconds, then the sound of a deep, controlled breath. "I'm coming home," he said simply. "Tonight." He didn't wait for her to argue. He booked the earliest flight, packed his things, and drove through the night from the airport straight home. When Mark walked through the front door the next morning, Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. "Daddy," she whispered, as if afraid it was just another phone call. But when he knelt and opened his arms, she ran into them, burying her face in his neck, sobbing quietly. Mark held her tighter than he ever had. He looked over her shoulder at Rachel, who stood near the staircase, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The home felt alive again, not with joy yet, but with a sense of safety slowly returning. Mark didn't raise his voice. He didn't make threats. He was a calm man by nature, but his silence carried more weight than anger ever could. He sat with Emma, asked gentle questions, and listened. Piece by piece, the truth came out, the harsh words, the slaps, the fear that had built up over days. Every word tore at his heart. But instead of rage, what filled him was a fierce protectiveness and a deep sorrow that he hadn't been there sooner. Later that day, Mark called Denise. His tone was steady, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. "You will never come near my family again," he said quietly. "You hurt my little girl. You broke her trust. I could destroy your life for that, but I won't. You'll have to live knowing what you did to a child who trusted you." Then he hung up. No shouting, no threats, Just finality. Rachel wanted to press charges, but Mark held her hand. Let's focus on healing Emma first, he said softly. The rest can wait. Together, they made an appointment with a child counselor. It wasn't easy. The first few sessions, Emma refused to speak. But over time, through gentle play and patient listening, she began to open up. Slowly, the spark in her eyes returned. One afternoon, a few weeks later, Rachel came home early from work. Through the window, she saw Mark and Emma in the backyard. He was showing her how to plant flowers, something his own mother had taught him when he was a boy. Emma was laughing again, her small hands covered in dirt. These will grow strong, Mark told her, pressing her little palm around the seed. Because you planted them with love. She giggled and said, then they'll be super strong, Daddy. Rachel watched them, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. Healing didn't happen overnight. There were still nights when Emma woke up crying, still moments when she hesitated before trusting new people. But she had her parents' love, and that love became her anchor. Rachel stopped blaming herself. Mark stopped replaying the what-ifs. They both learned that healing wasn't about erasing pain, it was about replacing it with love that was stronger. Months later, something unexpected happened. Denise reached out with a letter. Rachel found it in the mailbox, written in shaky handwriting. Her instinct was to tear it up, but something stopped her. That night, when Emma was asleep, she sat at the kitchen table and read it. Denise confessed to struggling with her own trauma, admitting she had lost her job and couldn't forgive herself. She begged for forgiveness, not to erase what she'd done, but to find a reason to live differently. Rachel read the letter twice. Then she showed it to Mark. His jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. You don't have to reply, he said. She doesn't deserve it. Rachel thought for a long moment. Maybe not, she said quietly. But maybe forgiveness isn't for her. Maybe it's for us. The next morning, she wrote back just one line. We forgive you, but please seek help, no child deserves your pain. She didn't sign her name. She simply mailed it and let it go. That night, she slept peacefully for the first time in months. As time passed, their lives found rhythm again. Emma's laughter filled the rooms, the same rooms that once felt heavy with silence. She started painting, her drawings full of color and sunlight. When her teacher asked who inspired her art, she said, my dad, because he came home when I needed him. That simple sentence melted Rachel's heart. It reminded her of how love can rebuild even the most broken things. Years later, when Emma was a teenager, she found that old stuffed rabbit in a box and smiled. I used to hold this when I was scared, she said. Mark smiled back. And now you're braver than all of us. Emma nodded, slipping her hand into his. Because you came back, she said softly. That's when everything changed. Mark kissed her forehead. I never really left, he said. And in that moment, Emma knew it was true. Love, once lost and found again, becomes the strongest shield in the world. In the quiet of the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and gold. There were no more secrets, no more fear, only peace. Rachel leaned her head on Mark's shoulder. Emma hummed softly beside them. And in that stillness, life felt whole again. Because even in the darkest moments, love can return, gentle, steady, and strong enough to turn the tables forever.